What's up, guys? I have a theory, and it's this. When you start playing, a lot of your technique is based on luck. It's not all just what you put in. There's an amount of luck involved in the way that your technique starts out, and therefore the way it ultimately develops. And this is especially true for people who are self-taught, and unfortunately, a lot of guitar players are self-taught. I know I am, okay? So the way that I started, I kind of had this idea a while ago, but I was watching this interview of Rick Beato and Billy Strings, which I know you know who Rick Beato is. Billy Strings is an incredible bluegrass guitar player, like flat picker. Crazy stuff, dude. He's an incredible, just virtuosic dude. And I was watching this interview and he said something that I think is very notable, and I want to play that for you right now, and then I want to talk about it, okay? So this is the spot right here.
And I remember specifically like watching my dad's hands and just looking, and he would play and my dad would hold his pick like this, his three fingers kind of chilling down to the side right here. And I would look at my hand and then look at his and just try to make it the same, Like, how does Dad do this? And just by looking,
Yeah. So I think that's huge, and I think Billy he's got an inquisitive mind, clearly, to sit there and compare his own hand position to his dad's hand position, and to be he remembers this. This was a really long time ago, right? So this is like this is a core memory of his, of him actually looking at his hand and trying to mirror what his dad was doing. And nowadays he has insane technique, but look at how specific he is. Essentially, there's 3 senses that go into evaluating whether your technique is good and developing good technique. And they are this. Number 1, does it sound good? Okay, this is your ears. Number 2, does it look good? This is your eyes. This is your sight, okay? In this case, Billy was using his eyes to make sure that his hand looked like his dad's hand. And then there's the third one, which I'm not really going to talk about. It's extremely important, the way things feel, okay? And usually that has to do with making sure there's enough relaxation present. In Billy's case, he was using sight as well as sound to make sure that his technique matched what his dad was doing at the time. And he's lucky that his dad had good technique, because he could have just as easily mimicked a really nasty, bad movement pattern that would ultimately lead him to having bad technique, right? Hey, real quick, are you sick of making slow guitar progress? Do you feel plateaued? Well, I'm gonna destroy your plateau if you click that link below, okay? If you're at all interested, I'm actually helping teach people how to make faster progress than they ever have, okay? So if you're interested in that, you wanna shred fast, click that link. All right, back to the vid. So when it comes to classical guitar, a lot of times when people start out, they're only thinking about the way something sounds, right? And of course, this is music. We're playing music. And once you can get this to happen on a string, or this, you're automatically thinking, okay, that must be good. That must be right. The problem is this, and this is going to sound silly, but I'm going to ask you a question. Why is it bad technique to play a string like this? Why is that bad technique? Sounds good. Sounds just as good as this, right? Sounds just as good as that. Well, the issue, of course, is that this gigantic arm motion means that I can play that particular note, but when I have to play another note, I have to travel a very long distance to find that particular note. And of course, it's an extreme example, but people do this all the time in smaller ways. So when they're learning to pluck, if in the beginning of their playing, they ingrain a movement pattern that maybe gives them the right sound they want, but doesn't look the way it should, in the sense that the hand is doing some motion that, while producing the sound, makes it impossible for them to potentially speed up, or potentially control the volume, or potentially access other strings, you're going to run into a lot of problems. And in the beginning, a lot of this, I think, is just based on luck. When you first grab the guitar, especially if you're self-taught, when you grab it and you start doing this. When I started doing this, when I started playing guitar, I started like this when I started finger picking. I would put my pinky out, right? Why is that a problem? Well, it's extra tension. Not only can you feel this, right? So that covers kind of the third sense pillar, right? You can feel this tension in your hand when you have your pinky out like this, but you can see it, right? Now, it's not impeding with the notes, though, right? So why does it matter? So you can think of it like this. Like, I remember when I was learning how to type in school, I had a typing class, right? You had to, like, get used to, like, putting your fingers on home row or whatever, and you have to get used to using all of your fingers. Before that, I was actually more comfortable with using my index fingers and pecking around like this. Now, of course, your potential for speed when it comes to typing is severely limited, even though this might be easier for you at the time. And to me, that's equivalent to, ingraining something like this into your technique. Or having your hand in some position where you're using an anchor and going like this. Because what if you want to play this note and this note really quickly in succession? Well, maybe you use your index finger. But if you want to do all four of these, you're going to need all your fingers. And these are very obvious examples of this. But there's a lot of less obvious examples of this that I think people are probably doing a lot of the time. One of them would be operating mostly from this particular knuckle, and sometimes actually taking this finger and strumming like this, okay? The stroke we want is like this on classical guitar. And I think fingerstyle, honestly. Because you're engaging in the knuckles that's the easiest to engage with, and it's got the most strength and power behind it, okay? If you take your hand and you put it on a table or something like that, and you try to do this really, really fast, it's actually a lot easier to do it with these particular knuckles, right? The big knuckles of the hand, as opposed to this, if you're trying to operate from these middle digits right here. And that, to me, that tells me that, when it comes to physiology, your hands actually want to do certain things, or it's easier for them to do certain things than other things. So in the case of starting playing guitar, or even if you've been playing for a while, the problem is that ultimately you're working your hand in a way that is not as efficient, it's not as easy, and not as potentially powerful as another way you could be doing it. Now, in the beginning, when people are beginners, people don't really need to play fast music, or they're not trying to play fast music. And so that usually isn't a problem. If you're playing single line melodies, you can bounce all you want and it's fine. It doesn't matter. But it's when it's time to do really fast stuff that you run into issues, because the original motion which you happen to ingrain, which sometimes is a case of just dumb luck, ends up not allowing things at a certain level of complexity or a certain level of speed. And listen, like all aspects of playing, it's just a matter of proper muscle control. And not only the tension of the muscles, because in order to make a movement, muscles have to tense, right? They have to contract. But you have to also incorporate relaxation into your playing. It's really, really important, like muscles being turned off at the proper times. And the way that actually manifests is through feeling. And this is like an almost invisible thing that people tend to not think about, and I think is one of the most random things that people ingrain into their technique early on. Like Billy, like looking at his dad, for example, it would have been totally possible for him to replicate the way his dad's hand was moving, but do it in a way that was extremely tense, right? So for example, proper classical guitar technique kind of looks like this, right? It's like my hand is basically like pretty neutral, it's pretty relaxed, and there's enough space between my hand here, my knuckles here, and the strings that I can do a proper stroke, right? So I might have a good sound, and it might look like a good stroke, but what if I'm really tense, right? It's like, look at my hand right now. It's totally relaxed, okay? Look at my hand right now. It's totally tense, okay? And when someone's starting out, the tenseness with which they're beginning to develop their technique is going to ingrain itself just as much as every other aspect of technique. If you're trying to match something sight-wise, if you're trying to look at somebody's hand and replicate that, which which you should absolutely do that. The issue is that there might be a whole bunch of other muscles that are very much turned down, very much contracted, and you'll ingrain that stuff into the motions just as much as you could ingrain, really bad popping or bouncing stuff, which is why I think above everything, you need to think about relaxation, okay? So it's sound, it's sight, and it's relaxation. And I myself, I've gotten a lot better in the past few years, I think, and it's because I've just watched my favorite guitar player, Grisha Goryachev, and I've just studied his hand, and I've tried to replicate his hand. And I've slowly realized over time that the more relaxation that I put into the motion, the more control I have ultimately to be able to do things like, play louder or play softer or especially play faster. But that's it, dude. That's the whole thing. I really think that I think that people get lucky sometimes in the beginning with either mentally the way that they are thinking about technique, or just they happen to grab the guitar and they move their muscles in a certain way and they happen to get the sound they want. You want to be as intentional as possible when it comes to all the aspects of technique. Now, buckaroo, if you want to learn some more about some technique related stuff, if you want to make your technique not suck, got a link down below. Give that puppy a click. You can be just like Billy Strings, okay? You want to be like me? You want to be like Billy? Click that link down below. And that's the video, dude. Tell me what you think about this. If you think I'm full of crud, go ahead and give this video a like or a subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.